My name is James Maher, and this is the Photo Breakdown.
Photo Breakdown is a podcast where I talk with a photographer, sharing the story of a specific photograph, technique, or business win. I'm your host, Scott Weidenkivowitz, and this is Photo Breakdown. Let's break it down. Hello, my name is Scott Weidenkivowitz, your host of Photo Breakdown, and today I'm sitting down with James Maher to talk about a really great photo that has a really cool story behind it as well, actually. But before we dive in, this episode is sponsored by my lead generation course for photographers called More Leads, More Clients. Yes, if you would like to increase the leads you're generating on your photography site, you can use the strategies I teach in my course. Access it at scottwyden.com/leads. Hey, James.
Hey.
To those who are listening to this, they don't know that we know each other, so we know. So we've been talking all day, even though it's now 8 o'clock at night, and we are recording this. So this is a lot of fun. Episode 3 of Photo Breakdown.
Big time.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I can't wait till we get to the 50 milestone, the 100 milestone. It's gonna be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I got 2 questions for you.
Sure.
The first question, what do you wish you had known 10 years ago?
10 years ago, I wish I had invested in Bitcoin. I wish I had gotten a little earlier on the Twitter train and all that stuff. No, it's a good question. I wish I had carved out a little bit more time for personal photography 10 years ago, probably. Yeah,
Okay.
I always did a decent amount of that, but it got lost for a few years and just trying to make a living. And so I wish I had forced myself a little bit extra time.
Awesome. Now the second question, and I think because of who your parents are, is going to make this even better a question. How would your parents describe what you do for a living?
For the people who don't know, my parents are both psychiatrists. So how would they describe it? I'll say it from my mother's perspective. My mother would say she understands it, but I don't know if she actually does. Because she's a psychiatrist, she just has to, be. No, I think they would definitely. My mom said that of all the careers she could have guessed, she would never have guessed this one, but it makes the most based on my personality. And I always said I would never be a psychiatrist because of how crazy my parents are. But when you're doing photography, there is a lot of, I think, a little bit of the same thing that you do in psychiatry. When you're doing portraits, when you're trying to diagnose things, when you're trying to tell stories, I think there's actually a lot more crossover than you might think. Yeah, I didn't get too far away, actually, I think, from the psychiatry.
Yeah, especially with the type of photography that you do, I think you're spot on. That you're right in that zone.
Definitely, and it is my own form of therapy too. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so let's break down that photo. We are looking at a photo right now. It's a photo of a guy with a mask on his. So we know the time.
Hello Kitty. It looks like is it like a Hello Kitty mask or something like that? Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Some pink. Yeah.
Yeah. We know the time period. We know that it's during the pandemic, right? It's not pre-pandemic. This is at least mid-pandemic. Who is this guy?
So his name's Mango, or he told at the top of my head his real name, but yeah, he goes by Mango. And do you want me to start for the whole story right now? What do you? Yeah, I had been I lived down the block from in Brooklyn from this really crappy gas station called Speedway. And it's funny because one of the people I actually did a portrait from there was just like, I was just standing next to him. I was watching him on his bike trying to like put the gas in. He's like, man, this is a crappy gas station. So, I decided a few months ago to do a project on this place because it's literally the most interesting subsection of people. It's like the real New Yorkers, the longtime people. It's just a fat place where all these interesting people congregate at this gas station. So I decided I'm going to go and it's on my way to the subway. So when I go to work, I just take a camera and I leave a little bit early and I photograph. And when I have a little extra time, like I'll sit there for 20 minutes and look for interesting people. And so it's just a mixture of candids and portraits and stuff. So it's actually turning out pretty interesting. It's a pretty fascinating place. And one of the things I started to notice on my ways to jobs is a few times I started to see like birds eating food, look like rice or bread or something. And I saw that I started seeing that more and more often. And then a few times I saw the guy who was feeding them and I was like rushing to a job. I had my camera. So I took a couple quick candid street photography shots as I was rushing off. And I was wondering who the guy was. And after this happened a few more times, like one day I was like, I got to finally stop this guy and get a portrait of him and talk to him. So I was walking there one day around the time when he's usually there. And I was like, all right, I'm going to stop him. I'm going to talk to him. And I get close and he just looks at me and he just goes, hey, take my picture, man. So I was like, sweet, awesome, that's easy. So I was like, hey, how's it going, man? Yeah, and it turns out we started talking, and this is the thing I love about photography is you just can have these really cool connections based on the camera that you just don't expect. And so he was just this really enthusiastic guy. He said he came out every day to feed the pigeons as his form of therapy. Speaking of therapy,
Hmm.
and he just found it really relaxing. And then it turns out the guy in the back of him is the Glow Hotel, which during the pandemic turned into a homeless shelter or to house homeless people. And he had been living there, but they recently kicked them all out, and now they're like advertising $89 a night hotel rooms. But so he said he had just been kicked out of the place, and he's been sleeping on friends' couches and stuff like that. And yeah, so that was the story. We talked for a while. He was super nice. I took his picture, helped him out a little bit, and he gave me a bunch of pictures. And this one is my favorite one. It just shows it's pretty simple. It's not doing anything flashy, but he's
Yeah.
got this look on his face.
Yes. Very,
And
very natural. Very natural
exactly,
look.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so very natural. And so the goal is now with this project is I hope he keeps coming, because I plan to keep on photographing him and photographing the birdseed and having the story of the gas station, but then the story of him and just these shots throughout as well, and then end up with this portrait at the end. So it's like a reveal.
It would be really neat if you start seeing progress of like, where is he living next? And, or
Exactly.
did he get a job? Is he now working somewhere? Is he now have a new place to live? Like, it would be cool to see where, it goes for him.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. That's part of. I really hope he keeps coming. Who knows
Yeah.
if he will, because he's not living there anymore, but he still has been.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I hope to keep asking questions, getting to know him better, if I'm lucky enough to do that. Yeah, so it's a great point and something that I'm hoping to do.
And actually, a book or a movie called Speedway,
Yeah,
which is about a guy named Mango, would be like a fantastic story.
definitely. The
So,
crazy thing is that 2 days after the shot, I was like heading to a job, and I was like, I was in like Prince Street subway station or something like that, transferring over, and literally he like walked right by me, and I was like, Mango, what's going on, man? It was like that, literally the most random encounter after like 2 days after in the middle of the city. Yeah.
that's great. So it's interesting because a lot of your work, for anybody listening, you're obviously going to be checking out this photo, so please browse James's other work. But a lot of your work is black and white, and this whole series so far is color.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting. Why did you choose color for this when a lot of the time you go with black and white? Is there a reason behind it?
So it's pretty interesting. Right now I'm like half black and white and half. I tend to when I shoot in Manhattan, I tend to shoot in black and white, and when I shoot in Brooklyn, I tend to shoot in color. So it's pretty interesting. The thing is, when I'm finishing a project in Manhattan called Lux City, which is about the changing nature of the city, the gentrification, the luxurification, and it really feels right. It feels like this luxury look in black and white. It gives it this kind of feeling. So that's why I do all that work in black and white. And then when I'm in Brooklyn, I'm photographing the complete opposite of that. More of the real New York, more stuff like that. And just the colors really feel more natural for that. So I think in terms of projects and ideas and what I'm shooting, and it's more of an active switch. When I shoot in Manhattan, I shoot with the Fuji X100, turn the screen into black and white. When I shoot in Brooklyn, I do a little more portraits and things like that. In addition to the candids and environmentals, I shoot with the GFX, the medium format camera. And everything I shoot with that, I just know it's going to be. So yeah, that's the reason.
And so when you're doing the medium, so like for this project, for example, so this series, are you doing like you would do street photos in Manhattan as far as setting the lens on a fixed focal point and then just going, or refocusing as you do zone focus versus not? What's your system for that?
So I do, in general, I do zone focusing like sometimes, like half the time, and half the time I don't. This project is interesting because usually when I shoot in Brooklyn now, I always use the GFX, the medium format. But for this project, half the time when I'm heading to my Manhattan jobs and I head through this gas station, I have only the X100 with me. And so and this project is a mixture of, I'm trying to figure out how to intertwine these candid, quick shots, and I'm trying to make them look like I'm not putting too much effort into them. Like I'm trying to make them look like they're found moments and maybe feeling a little bit haphazard on purpose. And then mixing them with the more formal GFX portraits, where like the portrait of this guy. So when you look at I'm going to share some photos with this one of the bird seeds, the bird stuff. Even though there are a lot of other photographs in this project that I need to put together, but those photographs are all pretty much with the X100. I try to take them a little quicker and make them feel like not perfectly composed, and then they contrast with this portrait. So yeah, this project's going to have a mixture of styles, and I'm trying to figure out how to make that all work. Yep.
Yeah, look in, so we're talking about the one specific photo, but when you do look at it overall, you can tell
Mm.
that there's a mixture of cameras going on because of, first of all, just the color tonal qualities are going to be different between cameras, but also just the fact that the ones of the birds definitely look more candid. You can tell.
Yeah.
Plus, you can see yourself in it in the
Exactly.
shadow.
I did that. Yeah,
Which
that was on purpose. Yeah.
very Lee Freelander of you.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
But the photo of Mango specifically, the bokeh in the back, like how smooth it is, he definitely pops off that background, which is really good as well. And it is so colorful from top to bottom. It's a very colorful photo, which is really nice to see as well.
Yeah, and that camera just renders colors
Yeah.
amazingly. So it's interesting. It's like tough to figure out how to mix when you're talking about different qualities of camera. Yeah, to mix it together so it all works together. They're both Fuji, so it's not as stark as
Yeah.
two completely different cameras. But it's just something that when I'm editing, I'm trying to get them to match up enough so it feels consistent.
Yeah, so it's funny because nowadays when you talk about Fuji cameras, and we want to talk about, let's say, what I'm going to ask you is what lens you were using, what the focal length was. It's
Mm.
interesting because if you're talking their typical mirrorless camera, you're talking a crop sensor, right? And
Yep.
now when you're talking the GFX, it's a medium format. So there's no tradition. You're not using a traditional 35 millimeter full frame size sensor. You're using a medium format sensor for this portrait.
Yeah.
So well, if you say you're using a 50 millimeter lens, it's not really 50 millimeters. What a full frame photographer would understand, or even a cropped sensor photographer would understand. If you could tell us what lens you were using for this photo,
Mm.
if you recall, and then what the focal length was that you were at even if you can do the conversion between medium format and 35 so people can understand it
Yeah,
more.
no, I can do that. Yeah. So the lens that I use the most for this one is the 63 millimeter lens, the GF 63 millimeter, and that is the equivalent of 50 of a
Nice.
50. And then for the X100, I use the telephoto attachment, the 33 millimeter attachment, which is also the equivalent of 50 millimeters. So I use 50 millimeter most often, and then I also use my second, like the other lens I use is the pancake lens, which I forget the millimeter of it, but it's the equivalent of about a 40 millimeter on the GFX. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, I love this photograph when you shared with me. The story behind it is
Mhm.
just incredible. So I can't wait to follow along with where you go with it, see more photos from it, with and without Mango in it.
Yeah.
And I'd be curious to see if other people start joining in with Mango over time as well, because you
Yeah.
never know, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah, it'll be like a West Side Story thing of people feeding the birds.
yeah,
But just interesting about this gas station is that you think it's a place where people wouldn't say yes for photographs. They're in a rush and stuff, but
right.
literally like everybody I ask, and I'm messing some people that I'm thinking are going to say no, and they're all like, "Yeah, sure, take my picture." And they're like, "What's it for?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'm just doing photos of this people in this crappy gas station." And they're like, "Oh cool, okay, I get it." It's shockingly not what you'd expect in this place, and it's really fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For the record, I have a Speedway around the corner from me, but it's on a highway, so I wouldn't go and take pictures there. But in Brooklyn, it might be a little different.
Definitely. Yeah, we can compare speedways. We can do like the Jersey
Yeah.
Speedway,
Yeah. Thanks, James, for breaking down this photo with me. I can't wait for everybody to take a look at this. We're going to, of course, link to where everybody can see this photo in the show notes for this episode. Um, I have one more question for you.
Mhm.
I really have two, but what should I have asked you but didn't?
That's a good question. I can't, let me think. What should you have asked me about the photo or just in general? Yeah.
Is your son sleeping?
He usually lays in bed for about half an hour. Yeah, but he's good. He's 3.5 years old and he's just a ball of nutsoness right now. Yeah, I don't. What should you ask me? I don't know. I think I can't think of a question to ask me, but I would say that for something specifically for like this project, it's not. I've been doing like portraits of people on the streets for a long time,
Mhm.
and you think it's interesting because the more you do it, the more comfortable you get with it, and the kind of easier you get talking with people.
Yeah.
But it never changes. It's just I'll get there. I'll like do it like regimented. I'll be like, I have to go. I have to go. And there's days where I just don't feel like it at all, and I don't feel like being social. And I know a lot of people do that as well, and they just kind of like turn around and go back. But over the time, I've gotten good at just pushing myself when I really don't feel like it. And some of those, like today, I did not feel like it whatsoever. And I got two great portraits of guys who I like. I was like, oh, I saw a great guy, and I was like, damn it, now I have to go talk to him because I'll kill myself. I'll beat myself up. And it turned out great. I think that's probably something that I struggle with, even though I've been doing this for a long time, and I know everyone else does as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
You and I are both on that ambivert side of things, like
Mm.
right in the middle of extroversion and introversion.
Yeah.
And you have been doing street photography way longer than I have, and you've figured out how to talk to people randomly
Mm.
and get the portrait. That's something that I just know myself, I'm not comfortable doing. So it's great that you keep doing it when I know it's a struggle.
Yeah, definitely.
So,
Yeah. Some days it's okay, but yeah, no, it's I don't know. Yeah, it's like I love doing it, but it doesn't feel comfortable. So it's exactly what
yeah.
you're talking about. Yeah.
So where can our listeners connect with you?
So they can go to my website. It's my last name is Maher, Maher. So it's jamesmaherphotography.com. If you just Google James Maher, you can find me there. And yeah, check out my site. I have, if you're ever traveling to New York, I have a free New York photographer's travel guide, which you can just go and find that on the site and download that. Yeah. And if you have any street photography questions, just send me an email anytime.
Awesome. Thank you so much for listening to Photo Breakdown. For the show notes and to see the photo that James and I talked about today, visit photobreakdown.com.